is inevitable. One must destroy in order to create. We are no Jedi.
I started hearing whispers of Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire. What happens when we find Thrawn?
Power, such as you've never dreamed.
This is Mix Sessions' Emmy Award season virtual event. I'm Jennifer Walden, here to talk about Ahsoka, Part 4, Fallen Jedi, streaming on Disney+, which has been nominated for Outstanding Sound Editing for a comedy or drama series half hour. So joining me are some of the sound editors who are well acquainted with the Star Wars franchise. We have Supervising Sound Editor Matthew Wood. Matt won a 2020 Emmy Award for sound editing on The Mandalorian and earned 7 other Emmy nominations for sound editing. Those shows include Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Star Wars Rebels. Hey, Matt, thanks so much for being here to talk about the sound of Ahsoka.
Thanks for having us. This is great to have a little reunion here, even though it's virtual. We're all over the world right now. I think David's in London, Bonnie's at the ranch, and I'm in Petaluma. Good to be here.
Awesome. So next is Supervising Sound Editor, Re-recording Mixer Bonnie Wild. Bonnie has won 3 Emmy Awards for sound editing and mixing on The Mandalorian, and another Emmy Award for sound editing on Moon Knight. She also earned 5 Emmy nominations, which include sound editing on The Book of Boba Fett and Star Wars Rebels. Hi, Bonnie. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hi, Jennifer. It's good to see you again.
We also have sound designer and re-recording mixer David Acord. David also won the 2020 Emmy Award for sound editing on The Mandalorian and was nominated for 6 other Emmys, including sound editing on Andor, The Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars Rebels, and more. Hey, David, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we were talking about Ahsoka, Part 4, Fallen Jedi. This episode is packed with lightsaber battles, like Ahsoka battling Marok. So Marok has this spinning double-bladed lightsaber weapon, and it's so cool. Okay, so how do you handle the lightsaber sounds? I know you must have a trove of them by now. Do you perform them to picture with like a sampler, like Contact, or what's your approach to making the lightsaber sounds work with the action on screen?
Yeah, you can use a sampler, of course, and kind of modulate and then vary the speed and pitch. And it's, for Merrick's spinning saber, it's sort of a similar process we would use for a saber throw. That sort of spinning, Doppler spinning thing. It's a very similar process without the Doppler aspect to it. That weapon was really introduced in Rebels, which we all worked on as well. That sort of Inquisitor spinning saber. So a lot of that is borrowed from that show. We kind of updated a little bit for Merrick, gave it a little extra. To answer your question, there's a number of lightsaber designs and patterns we have in our library that we use for everything.
I can't imagine what the metadata looks for all of those. How do you name them? Left swish, right swish, fast swish.
They're all kind of, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so many, and each one is kind of attributed to a character. So you've got, Luke's saber, you've got Vader's saber, you've got Merrick's saber, or Ahsoka's. She has various sabers because she had different ones in Clone Wars than she has now. The dark saber, they're all labeled that way. And then there's, dark saber fast, dark saber medium, or whatever it is, ignite and off and all that. And there's, at this point, there's got to be hundreds of lightsaber sound effects in the library.
Awesome. So the lightsabers aren't the only thing that you borrowed from Star Wars Rebels. There's also Sabine's blaster. Was that updated or changed to make a sound used for animation fit a live action show?
It's beefed up a little bit. Yeah, it's the same root sound. Like it's recognizable as her saber, but it's got a little more of a punch to it now for the live action show.
So another really fun scene in this episode was the Jedi droid, Hu Yang. He gets into a fist fight with the HK-87 assassin droid. Can you talk about some of your sound work for this scene? It was hilarious.
So yeah, that's a fun scene. There aren't too many kind of droid on droid violence scenes in Star Wars. You don't really see that very often. So it's kind of you get to use a variety of metallic impacts, and the way you kind of do that is each droid sort of has its own sort of tone of impact. The impacts on the HK droid tend to be a little duller, a little denser. Impacts on Hu Yang, because he's sort of an older droid, tend to be a little more hollow, a little more rattly, and that's sort of then you get sort of like a musicality to it in the fight.
And what about vocal processing? You know, he sounds great, and he goes,
"Oh, yeah, yeah." No, that's Matt's territory there. But that was David Tennant, right?
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, that was. And we were thinking about what we were going to do in that scene, because when it's a droid on droid fight, you're like, would they be talking? Would they be exerting themselves? But when we were doing the ADR for that with David Tennant, because we did all of his dialogue. I think we recorded some things, but then it ended up that it was going to be a full sound design moment, except for that, you know, when you do have his mouth actually get covered, which is great. Yeah, he's. I mean, it was wonderful to have him back, because he loves Star Wars so much, and it's almost like you know, you're writing during ADR, because there's not much animation that takes place on his face. So we had a lot of opportunities with David to record. I think we did like 5 sessions with him, with Dave Filoni and Tennant, and that was always great, because he's such a sweet man and actor, and loves Star Wars, and you can tell in his performance.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to another question. Like, yeah, if it's a droid on droid fight, are you going to have exertion sounds? I mean, are they exerting effort? Impact reactions?
Generally not. I mean, like sometimes we'll record things like tonal, get the actor to do some tonal sounds. So maybe that if there's some kind of an overload in its system when it's hit or punched or it's dying, you can have Dave, you know, Acord can have a lot of material to work with to kind of stretch and pull and make it sound like it's you know, malfunctioning in some way. I think some of the droids we've done in the past, even ones that David has voiced, are all sometimes weird tonal things like that, vocal, like you know, that kind of stuff.
What were those red guys called from?
Oh, I forget. With the I was talking more about your the animated one you did.
Heisinger.
Heisinger, yeah, where it's all just like you know. Using your own voice sometimes works out great for design, because you can experiment with it right then and there.
Yeah, it's your own voice is the easiest thing you have to kind of manipulate, but it's always with you.
So what's your running tally of droid voices at this point? How many have you voiced?
Matt's in the lead on that one.
I don't know. I forget. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's funny when you watch these shows. We did, you know, we all have done our share of animation and Star Wars and movies and whatnot. So it's yeah, I don't recall. Probably a lot. We've done. I mean, Clone Wars was one of those where we did a ton of different voices and whatnot for Filoni, and that was one thing actually on this show, which was great, was the trust that we had with Dave Filoni. I mean, he basically wanted the 3 of us as his dream team, because we've all sort of in different stages of working with Filoni, and so we got to, you know, come on board, and we all had schedule available time for him, and we did our mix in this carriage house at Skywalker Ranch, which was where Filoni started his career in animation. So there was a lot of crew synergy that happened on this show, and we had 2 mixers going for our streaming series, which we don't normally have. So that was all that really lended to a very positive and creative environment on the stage and putting this all together. So it was not a lot of drama or anything, which was great. It was just, you know, we got to purely focus on making the show and have it be, you know, have fun doing it, which we did.
And we had that mic rigged up on the stage, which I'm sure several people into or did crazy things into at various moments and got used. I definitely remember Dave, you screaming into it. I can't remember.
Well, And Bonnie, you're the voice of the blue protocol droid in episode
I am.
1.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Is that the first line we hear in the movie, isn't it?
It's the first line you hear in the series, yeah.
100% thought that would get replaced, and yet still there.
We love it.
Yeah, so the hyperring power-up, this is a really cool sequence. Can you talk about the sound for this? I mean, you have all of these like X-Wings being flung through space and getting smashed around. Yeah, tell me about your sound work here.
That was a tricky sequence. You're talking about after it's actually blasted away and the wake. That was a Filoni concept there, that this giant, battleship, this enormous ship, when it takes off, anything in its wake, and it's not a normal hyperspace jump. It's ripping through space. It's kind of creating its own wormhole, or whatever terminology you want to use. So it's not using traditional hyperspace lane jumps. So it's ripping fabric of space and time and that kind of thing. So the backlash of that, the wake of it, would be kind of catastrophic, as the TIE fighters kind of figure out. It's just sort of waves of lightning, and just we have all this kind of weird. There's like animal screams kind of blended in with some of the explosions, and some of the lightning is kind of reversed, and you get all these kind of weird, surreal kind of moments that kind of happen. And when we're in cockpit POV mode, the sound's slightly different. It's a little weirder for the person inside the ship than when you're outside, and it's just chaos in that moment. That was kind of a fun thing to tackle.
I remember the pilot as well. We like warped the pilot's scream to kind of go in with the
Yeah.
That was
That's
a lot of fun.
That was one of those moments too, where I think, if I remember this one correctly, Kevin Kiner was our composer, and that's another. We worked with him on various shows over the years, and he's one of our Filoni's trusted few. And I believe, didn't we remove some music in that section? There was like when it was powering up to go off, and it's something that's like, it's not any kind of battle for the soundscape. It just worked well to get rid of it for that one part, and it made it much more real and harrowing to listen to, and all the time that syncopation of the rhythmic the thing turning on, and then the tearing through space, and everyone the resultant chaos that makes it. It's always just that we're all in the mix room together and having a creative time, and no one's stuck on any one idea, so we can have some freedom to do something like that. And always comes up with something, usually on the Filoni shows, it comes up with something great like that, because we're all open to this kind of thing.
That's the great thing about working with Dave is how open he is to our ideas and our thoughts on things like that. Yeah.
And I feel like we got the visual effects right when we were mixing, so I'm pretty sure Dave was like on the stage like doing some design and stuff. We're all just watching him.
No pressure.
Another great scene was the star map. So this thing makes such cool sounds, and then you have all these machines that are like powering the star map thing. So can you talk about what went into the sound of the star map and the machines that run it?
Can I? Trying to remember that one.
I do remember you harnessing, like you had provided a whole bunch of options there, and I remember he was leaning towards the more magical, or was it magical?
Yeah, we had it kind of little clockworky at the beginning, like a steampunk hologram sort of was the idea at the beginning. So it had like lots of moving parts, like when the things would spin, or rotate. We actually had sort of a mechanical element to kind of go with it, even though like that literally maybe doesn't make sense, but it kind of, from a design standpoint, it kind of works. We ended up stripping a lot of that out because Dave ultimately decided that this thing was leaned a little more Night Sister, a little more magical. And we went with the more sort of whispery, magical, tonal feel to it. So sort of like, like a magical hologram sort of orb thing.
I do remember when she said it was, when she puts it puts it in a thing, and then she's like, it calls to me. I remember we added the whispering in there.
Put some of the witches in there.
Yeah, the witches actually like calling to her.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Which we might have stolen that loop from. I can't remember. Did we take it from when we actually see the Night Sisters further down in the series?
Yeah, because we had them say her name, I think. I know. Yeah, we did a whole session with those the actors that played the witches, and we brought them in, and this was kind of an idea that came from, like, what was Mother Taliesin? Clone Wars? That was Clone Wars, right? Yeah. So like, Dave had come up with this amazing pre-reverb and processing for the witches. So in order for him to have the material to work with, I went and took the actors and recorded them in ISO booths at an ADR stage, and I had each actor do the other actor's lines too, so they could all, be together. And then you'd have whoever was the ones featured speaking on stage, you could kind of feature them a little bit, but then you'd have the other ones sort of in the pre or the post reverb. I don't know if they're even, that, and I think we stole that for this moment too. Yeah.
And Bonnie mixed that to great effect and kind of spun it around the room, the whispery echoes and all that stuff. Yeah.
So another cool space in this show was the world between worlds, which is kind of like a nice quiet moment in this otherwise really busy and complex show. So can you talk about your sound work for the world between worlds?
So pretty. That's one of my favorite Dave Acord sounds. The the footsteps on the
tip of the hat to our Foley folks too for the glassy footsteps on the walkway. That was Ronnie, right?
Yeah, Ronnie did those, and then we had those sweeteners because when we went to the world between worlds in Rebels, I remember cutting those with Ezra walking. Yeah.
Is that when she comes in? Like, is she under the water at that point? And she's coming out of. She sort of wakes up, and you blended the ocean sounds into the world between worlds.
The ocean waves kind of went with the whooshy, Starfield kind of coming over, and then Anakin approaches on the walkway.
Yeah, I love those stark, just quiet moments, and there wasn't even music, I think, for some section of that. So you're really feeling the space, which I love.
So this was such a fun show for sound. This episode in particular has so many like just one-off kind of cool sounds in it. And then just great complex scenes that you edited so beautifully, and it just works so well and doesn't feel overly complicated sound-wise, but there's a lot going on. So for you, like, what makes this episode special in terms of your sound editorial work on it?
Just to kind of take an opportunity to tip of the hat to James Spencer and Kim Patrick and Tim Farrell, who are our editors on the show. James cut dialogue and Kim and Tim cut effects. And Joel right? Cut Foley. Yeah. Joel Robbie.
Stephanie.
Yeah.
Stephanie and Vanessa.
Oh, that's right.
And we had Stephanie and Trey on ADR. Yeah.
Everybody was just kind of brought their A game. And yeah, to your point, it's what we like about the show, and part of our aesthetic is to not overcut, is to not overload. And you can get complex with a handful of sounds. You really don't need, 18 tracks for one thing. You can get complexity in the mix with just a few really key good sounds, cut the right way.
I already mentioned this once before, but I think the fact that we had 2 mixers was creatively just an amazing thing to have. Like, sometimes on these streaming shows, the budgets are obviously more limited than our feature work. So, but we were able to make it work to have 2 mixers, and 2 mixers who are super familiar with Star Wars and our director trusts eminently. So that really led to creativity happening more instantaneously. Like when you had to do a fix or some kind of change for the director, they could both work at the same time and do that. And it wasn't multiple passes. And I hope to see more of that, I hope to see more of this kind of work, but that was special for us because we hadn't done that on Star Wars streaming yet. So this was our first foray into that, and it was very successful.
It was kind of fun because like Ronnie had worked on Rebels, Kim worked on Rebels, we'd all worked on Rebels, and to like have this like live action seeing all these characters like Chopper rolling around
Yeah.
in live action.
Out in the hallway at the Mix, we had it was like the original one of the book covers of one of the Heir to the Empire books, and it had Thrawn on it, and that was like in the hallway out, because this used to be like more of an administration building for Lucasfilm. And then it went into animation, and George Lucas has his own private art collection in there, and that just happened to be, and that was not placed there. It just happened to be that one of the original Thrawn images was there, and it was fun to be able to now, hey, we're working on a live action show, 30 years after that was made. And that just was a coincidence, but that was kind of fun. The history of it all, of Star Wars, and being part of that, and getting to contribute to something like that is always quite humbling.
And this team has contributed so much over the years. You guys have worked on so much Star Wars stuff. It's like you're walking, talking Star Wars libraries.
Roger.
Roger. I literally say that all the time. That's all the time that we have. Congratulations on your Emmy nomination for Outstanding Sound Editing for a Comedy or Drama Series, half hour. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about your amazing sound work on Ahsoka.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.